Hello. Welcome to Circle of Divine. Today we have for our speaker Alex Trenoweth. Hi Alex.
Hi Enid, how are you doing?
All right, thank you. All right, our usual question, how did you get into astrology in the first place?
When I was a teenager I found out that I was a Cancer, and I thought it was the worst thing ever to be a Cancer. I just thought that, the name itself is a little bit terrifying. And because my birthday is July 20th, I was always very quick to say, well, I'm on the cusp of Leo. And so, you're your star sign. When someone asks you what your star sign is, you got to say, I'm a Cancer. But I'm on the cusp of Leo. But anyway, as I got to be, like everyone else, very, very good at guessing star signs. When you start off, that's what you're good at, guessing star signs. And I started looking at astrology a little bit more, and I was absolutely delighted to discover that my Mercury and my Moon were both in Leo. So I thought that kind of answered, the internal feelings that I have for a Leo. So I was very excited to find this out. And of course, once you get the astrology bug, you just don't stop. You want to do everybody's charts. You want to have a practice. You want to try new techniques. Then you get to the state where you want to formalize your education. So you start paying for classes and you start going to conferences. And that's really how it all started. And like anybody else who finds astrology at that depth, you get addicted to it.
Are you largely self-taught, or did you study at any of the formal schools? Or
I did study with the Faculty of Astrological Studies, but I do find that I'm better off studying by myself and not having to adhere to anybody else's rules. I want to do my own thing. I want to do my own research, and I don't really like to be, prescribed to.
Right. And what astrologers do you admire?
Well, I have to say, even though I'm not a particular fan of star sign astrology, I really admire Jonathan Caner. I think he's a very wonderful man, and I've met his children, and I've had the pleasure of spending some time with his family on several different occasions via Rainbow Circle. And his knowledge and his generosity is just something to be admired. Sue Fairbrother, our friend from the lodge, is also somebody that I admire. Her tenacity and her knowledge is phenomenal.
You yourself have written a book about astrology and adolescents. Could you tell us something about it?
Yeah, my book is called Growing Pains, and there's a little bit of a story behind why I actually wrote this book, because I was teaching at the time, and my real name, my given name, is not Alex. I have another legal name that nobody uses. And so I asked my head teacher, can I be called this Alex? Would you mind not calling me this other name, because I really don't like it. And she Googled me, and she came across my website, lots of other different things that I've done, and she said, absolutely not. You must be called this other name, and if we catch you linking the two together, we were going to terminate your contract. It can't be done. So, so I was a little bit surprised by that. Anyway, a couple years went on, everybody calling by the wrong name, or so it felt like to me. And we had a speaker come to our school called Matthew Said, and this was a great turning point, not just in my life, but in my astrological practice, because Matthew Said is a ping pong player, a champion ping pong player, and he wrote a book called Bounce, which I read very thoroughly, made lots of notes, and I really thought he made a lot of good points about practice, and he has this theory about the 10,000 hour rule. And if you practice something for 10,000 hours, you're a master. So there I am at this inset, thinking to myself, oh, I'm a master astrologer. I've got 10,000 hours easily, 30 years experience, I'm a master. I got really excited. And I started thinking, oh, well, I'm a master teacher as well. I must have 10,000 hours teaching as well. I'm a master teacher and a master astrologer.
I think I see the moon in Leo coming through.
And then suddenly, inexplicably, Matthew Said brings up astrology. Why? Right? Yeah. And he says, he said, I don't know why astrologers persist in their practice when they know it's all been proven wrong. Well, there's me sitting there, my goodness me. Now, as a non-ping pong player, I would not say to Matthew Said, is ping pong really a sport, or indeed is it a sport for men? I would not say these things, but yet Matthew Said, a non-astrologer, felt he could have a pop at astrologers, so I let him have it. I didn't think I should let him have it, because given what my head teacher had told me all those years ago, but I just said, you don't know what you're talking about. How can you have an opinion? And everyone was like, she told him, didn't she? But then it got me thinking, hold on, if I'm a master teacher and a master astrologer, why don't I do something with bringing my two very different careers together? So this got me interested in the astrology of adolescents. Now, I'd done an MA course a few years ago about the effects of Saturn and Jupiter in an adolescent's chart. But it was that moment when I really felt I had a message to give to parents, to teachers, about how we can use astrology to ease the pain of growing up.
Could you expand on that a little bit? Obviously, one goes to the Jupiter half return at 6, the first Saturn square at 7. Would you like to tell us a little more about the contents of the book?
Yeah, sure. So the first Jupiter square is when a child is about 3 years old and they've mastered potty training, and they're also at a stage in their development when they can speak to a stranger and be understood without mom having to come along and interpret it. It's a really big step. And of course, we as astrologers understand that Jupiter is to do with travel and these kinds of things. Learning to use the toilet properly and learning to speak to strangers is something that is going to come in handy on journeys. And then about the age of 6 is the Jupiter, first Jupiter opposition, and that's when a child starts to learn how to read. So it's not the rote stage of memorizing letters, it's the faith it takes in putting those letters together to form words. So the leap of faith. At 9 years old, the waning Jupiter square is when a child's fears turn from being based on the boogeyman or based on any other fantasy creatures into more real fears, like the fear of strangers, the fear of pedophiles. Real fears start to come in. And then around the age of 11 to 12 is the first Jupiter return. And that's where I stop with Jupiter. Now Saturn has a longer time going around the sun. So the first Saturn square is about the age of 7 when a child loses their front teeth. So you can always tell a 7-year-old because they don't have the gap in the front of their mouth. And then at about 14 years old, they have what's called the Saturn Opposition. And that's when they start sitting exams, start getting ready for work. They start to be a little bit fearful about the future because they understand if I don't do well now, I'm going to have trouble when I'm a bit older. So they really start to take things a lot more seriously. Now the gap between the Jupiter return and the first Saturn opposition is what fascinates me, because this is where the child's brain starts to grow and develop. We know from pictures and scans that I've done on teenagers that the brain starts to develop more creases and folds, and synapses are starting to develop. So it's a bit like going down a corridor, a familiar corridor. If you don't explore the other corridors, eventually they start to close down at the Saturn opposition, if that makes sense. So it's very important to remember that the habits created between the ages of 11 and 14 are the habits of a lifetime. So, we need to make sure that our children have all the best experiences and they keep trying new things. As the brain develops, the more experiences they have, the better developed they're going to be as they get older. Because as I say, the brain starts to close down at 15. And it creates a veritable window opportunity. Anything bad that's happened in a child's life previously, for example, problems with dyslexia or behavioral problems, they can be revisited during those years and something can be done about it. So it's a crucial, crucial age.
Okay, but how about the other planets? How about Mercury, for example?
Well, in a classroom, because it's written for teachers and parents, but in a classroom as a practicing teacher, it's too much information for me to focus on all the planets in a child's chart. I'm only interested as a teacher in Jupiter and Saturn. I want to know where Jupiter is, I want to know where Saturn is. And in my mark book, I actually have the kids not in alphabetical order, but in birth order, with a little line saying, well, this group is Jupiter in Cancer, this group is Jupiter in Leo, for example, and Saturn symbols as well. But Mercury is really going to help you in teaching because, as I've said, it's to do with rote memory and repeating things that you've heard. Venus is about what you like and how might be a little bit about, where you're going to feel comfortable, but is there a place for that in the classroom? And the moon, because I'm working with noon charts usually, because I don't know the time of a child's birth, unless I bite the bullet and ask the parent, I don't really know where the moon is. And is that my business as well? I mean, do I need to know the moon placements of 30 children? But what it does help me with is it might give me an idea of their experiences of their own mother. So if I got a troublesome child, I want to see where the moon is so I know what kind of mother I'm dealing with, for example.
Right. And you concentrate mostly on hard aspects?
I do. There's a reason for that. Oppositions and squares provide crucial opportunities to do something about a particular problem.
Yeah.
Whereas trying is a release from a problem. It's kind of like fair weather. You don't really appreciate that weather until it gets cold again.
Yeah.
So the squares and oppositions I see as turning points where it's sort of like a reevaluation and pushes you into action. And the conjunctions are important too because they mark a sort of a place where to return to any place is to evaluate where you were before.
Yes.
So if I haven't been to Brighton for 6 years and I go back to Brighton, of course I'm going to think about my first visit to Brighton. And then my second visit to Brighton, I'm going to think about how it's changed. So that's how the conjunctions work.
So what dangers do you think adolescents face today that are very specific about the time that we're living in?
Well, I think we're only just starting to understand the dangers of the internet because now we're dealing with a generation that's grown up with the internet from the time that they were babies. And we were in the mid-90s, we as adults were just starting to learn how to use the internet. So we're well behind that generation in terms of our understanding of technology. But there are specific problems I think that we as a conscious community need to be aware of. And that is one of the things, unfortunate things, is that our children are bombarded with pornography. And going back to what I said about the habits of a lifetime, even the youngest school children in a secondary school are very well aware of pornography, more than we would ever be aware of. And we want our children to develop positive relationships with real people, not with images they see on, staged images that they see on the internet. And I just think that we need to really understand the effect it's having on our children and think about things in the long term. Now in the 1960s we had the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, and Mary Whitehouse came out and told us, and she warned us. She didn't know, of course, about Pluto conjunct Uranus, but she told us exactly what was going to happen if we didn't self-monitor now. And now we have the Uranus-Pluto square, and I really think that we are being challenged to do something about the effect that technology is having on our children, and thinking about long-term effects and what we can do to protect our children from developing very, very bad habits with interhuman relationships. For example, there was the recent mass murder, Elliot Rodger, who went on a killing spree in California. Now, his date of birth is 24th of July, 1991, so he has grown up with the internet all his life. And he he was born in London. And at about the time of his first Jupiter opposition, his family moved him to America. Now his Jupiter is in Leo, and the ruler of his Jupiter is also in Leo, it's the Sun in Leo. Now the Sun in Leo is also conjunct Chiron, which is the wounded healer, and those two planets are opposing to Saturn in Aquarius. Now Jupiter in Leo, I can't imagine the nightmare of teaching 30 children all with Jupiter in Leo, because this is attention seeking to the nth degree, okay? And the way the teachers need to be aware, if they understood astrology, is to focus on the positive aspects of Leos, because they have positive aspects, and that's benevolence, it's generosity, it's loyalty, as opposed to giving attention to poor behavior. So with Leos, it's all about catching them being good.
Could you tell us what else you're doing for the year? Because you've got quite a busy year ahead.
I've had a phenomenal year. On top of publishing the book, which I'm so proud of, and in a weird way, I'm thankful to Matthew Said because he's the one that wound me up enough to do it. But I'm also I've been doing the rounds at local astrology groups. I've been all over the place this year. But I'm really excited to say that I'm going to the AA conference in September. I'm also going to Phoenix, Arizona, for ISAR in a couple weeks later, and then in October I'm going to State of the Art Astrology in Niagara Falls.
Right.
So I'm really, really excited. It's been, like I said, a phenomenal year, and I'm really happy to be here as well. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And if anyone would like to contact you?
You can contact me by my website, alextrenoweth.com, or by an email, which is alex_trenoweth@hotmail.com.